I showed you earlier the blood-brain barrier. Now let's talk about the blood-brain barrier, or the generic term, the blood CNS barriers. So this will now be very important when you're dealing with strokes, with brain tumors, and actually everything else that goes wrong in the brain and the nervous system. So the blood-brain barrier is comprised by all of these elements that we see here. So from the inside, this is a capillary, and the lining of the capillary, as you know of, is the endothelial cell. The difference of the capillaries in your brain compared to outside the brain is the presence of these tight junctions here. What does this mean? Nothing gets in, nothing gets out unless allowed by certain protein channels here, or if it's something that is permeable through the cell membrane. So other than that, everything is locked out. The brain is locked in, blood, whatever's in the blood is locked out of the brain, as you can see here. Another element that you could see is the pericyte here, which is an epithelial cell which is found in regular intervals around the endothelial cells of the capillaries in your blood-brain barrier. So it helps maintain what goes on here. And then on the outside, you have these processes here, which are actually the cytoplasmic extensions of an astrocyte. This is called the podocyte, or the astrocyte end foot over here. So all of this altogether is now the modern definition of what a blood-brain barrier is. Okay, everything else outside, there's brain out here, you have neurons out here. So the brain, the barrier. So this is an airtight, cell-tight barrier, watertight barrier. Now we're zooming in. Now you see, there is this so-called peg and socket here, the importance of which we will see later on, and the tight junction. So this is just for emphasis, a very tight spot. Okay, so Sandy Cheeks is not allowed to enter Bikini Bottom because she is aerobic. So this is the blood-brain barrier in child-friendly picture. So the astrocytes up here, the astrocyte is an integral part of the blood-brain barrier, especially Gary over here, the pericyte. Okay, so what goes on those tight junctions? So it's a very tight junction, so nothing comes in, nothing goes out unless allowed by energy-consuming channels over here. Okay, this one we will get into in a while. What is this channel that lets water in and out? A very important channel. So later, much more on that. So what happens when you have disease? You have lesions. So you have zombie SpongeBob and zombie astrocyte, Patrick Star here, and an angry Gary over here. So this is a disordered state of the blood-brain barrier, meaning Sandy Cheeks. The tight junctions will be loose and open, and then liquid will leak out. Liquid water, as well as the electrolytes inside proteins, as well as the immune cells, have now a reason to barge into the brain, whereas they were previously sealed out. Okay, so how to understand a leaky blood-brain barrier? So all the fluid leaks out into the brain and causes a lot of damage. And while we're on that topic, certain parts of the CNS do not have a very effective blood-brain barrier, which will now explain a certain kind of problem with myelin, wherein the eyes and the spinal cord are affected. So this explains why there is propensity for the problem to start first with the vision and with the motor functions in the spinal cord, as will be discussed by Dr. Seng. So these are immunostaining for the optic nerve head, in the blood vessels in the optic nerve, showing you a very poor amount of proteins that are usually found in a normal blood-brain barrier. So not just the eyes, but also the spinal cord. So the barrier for the spinal cord is different from that of the barrier of the brain. So the so-called blood spinal cord barrier. So looking at it, it's actually the same. No? Same elements are found. You have endothelial cell, you have pericyte, you have astrocyte, and you have tight junctions in your blood spinal cord barrier. Okay, what's difference? So just look at this picture. I'm not asking you to know what this is. These are just the proteins expressed in the blood-brain barrier. So this is for the brain. This is for the spinal cord. So again, brain, spinal cord. You see any difference? There is no difference. There is a subtle difference. So the subtle difference is this. So what's the difference between the blood-brain barrier here? This is the blood spinal cord barrier here. What's the difference? The smile is bigger on this side, meaning the blood spinal cord barrier is a lot more permeable compared to the blood-brain barrier. So basically, the difference is, which just highlighting what the differences are here. Some of those proteins that are found in the tight junctions are less expressed in a blood spinal cord barrier. So that's the difference. So, but comparing the two, blood-brain barrier versus the blood spinal cord barrier, the blood spinal cord barrier is a lot more permeable. So this explains why certain disorders will target the eyes first, optic nerves first, and the spinal cord first before the rest of the brain. More on that later. Now, to complete the picture, I'm not sure if Dr. Batikalon or Dr. Dasig will mention this. There are certain areas in the brain which do not possess a complete blood-brain barrier. This happen to be the areas which are around the chambers of the CSF. So the areas around the CSF pathways are devoid of a complete blood-brain barrier because of the hormonal functions that reside in these areas.